here with me, Jen, the Taxidermy Witch, and we're doing another story time. This story time is a good one. It involves Peggy. It is one of Lily's favorite stories, and it's two stories about Javier. Okay, so we're naming this story time, Peggy's Javier. Now, when I change my voice and I speak like Peggy, you know, I'm not teasing her in any way. She's my mother. I love her. She's great. She's also approved me to tell any of these stories, so we're good to go. Don't think that I'm teasing my mother. She knows about this. She watches these videos. She encourages me, as a matter of fact, and she used to, and so have my brothers. At parties and stuff, they would have me get in the middle of the crowd and tell things that my mother used to say, all kinds of stuff. And I will do some of her famous sayings in a different video, but this video we're talking about Javier. So, Javier was an exchange student that came from Spain. He came over to us in about 1997. I think that was the year. Now, how did we get affiliated with Javier? Because remember, we don't have money, so it's not like we could show an exchange student a really good time. So basically, my mom was affiliated with this group of women in a Catholic church. It wasn't her church per se, but some really close friends, and they said, we have an exchange student that all of a sudden there was a death in the family of the host, and so they can't do it. Of course, Peggy was like, yeah, I'll help in any way I can. So I had no idea of this. I come home from school one day. And I hear Peggy screaming. Okay, and I'm like, oh no, what's going on? At this point, Peggy really wasn't a screamer, you know. She hadn't really hit menopause yet. So she's going, are you hungry? Are you hungry? And I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? So I scurry into the kitchen, like throw down my school bag, scurry in the kitchen, and there is this Hispanic gentleman sitting in my kitchen who Peggy is screaming at, like this far away from his face. And my brother Daryl was there too, and I heard him saying, Mom, he's not deaf. He doesn't understand English. And I'm laughing. I'm like, oh, I get it. Why is this guy here? And so, anyway, I think Daryl had come over to, like, help integrate Javier into the house and stuff like that. He didn't know Spanish, but Daryl's a great person. So he is more empathetic like I am, and you don't have to know somebody's language if you're empathetic and they have time. And, you know, if they don't understand the language, they're going to be reading off you too. So, just communicate with an empath. There you go. So, basically, my mom thought that yelling louder would get him to understand. And that might be a reaction for anybody, but it's like he didn't learn the amount of English he should have before he came. So that made the whole trip crazy hard on everybody, right? Nonetheless, none of us were expecting it to happen, and Peggy hadn't prepared, so she was like cleaning like a madwoman the whole time because she didn't get a chance to clean beforehand because she didn't know anybody was coming. So he probably thought that America was the strangest place ever, you know, because look at their host family. It's like having, if you guys have ever seen Married with Children, it would be like that, but not as bad. Not as trashy, but like kind of like that, you know, a lot of people just in and out, craziness. So anyway, Javier was there, and he slept in my room, and I slept on the hide-a-bed, which was whatever. I just kind of made it. I don't remember being upset about that. I was off to my friend's house most of the time. I was 15, and I was hanging out with one of my really close friends at the time, so I was just like busy all the time. I didn't really care. And I probably stayed at hers most of the time. Anyway, that's the story of the yelling that's funny, the communicating, and then basically when he got here, he realized that he was so excited to be here whether or not he was just sitting and watching TV, because he realized that WWF, something that was very popular in Spain, okay, and he was him and his group of friends were huge into it. WWF was 2 to 4 years further along here than it was that they were showing in Spain. So he was seeing futuristic versions. We helped him record all the episodes, like, or whatever you call them, all the matches, the wrestling matches. Do you remember, like, Hulk Hogan, like, the old stuff? Roddy Piper, I believe, was one of them. Andre the Giant, these types of WWF wrestlers, right? Not like the Ultimate Fighter. It's different, of course. So it's like the 80s stuff, but it was still shining through in the 90s. So anyway, we set him up with, if we couldn't give him gifts of taking him lots of places because we didn't have the money, we gave him the gift of trying to, set him up with some, like, futuristic videos. Possibly he could have used it like Marty did in the Time Machine with the almanac. He could have taken it home and placed bets and become a millionaire. Who knows what he could have done with it? No, seriously, because there was no internet then. You couldn't just look up who won the fight. Like, it would take papers, documents, things like that. Like real pre-internet research, yeah? So, anyway, that was one thing he got from us that was good. Now, one of the sadder things that happened while he was there was I was at home and I was in my room and, like, the doors were open and our house is all kind of just, like, open air throughout. So, good thing about Storytime is I can smoke. So, I hear all of a sudden the phone ring. So I'm like, okay, just in my room listening to Weezer or something. And then I hear Peggy say, "What? No. No! Not my Javier!" And I'm like, what? So I run into the living room, I'm like listening, I'm like, Mom, what's going on? And she's bawling, because like Peggy bawls over anything, kind of like I do, right? You guys see me cry on a whim. I got the genes from somewhere. It was definitely Peggy. However, Dawn's very sentimental as well. But she's bawling. And she goes, okay, yes, we'll be right there. And I'm like, oh no, he got hurt. Like, what do you think when you hear that? What are you guys thinking happened to him? Please type in the comments, right? I'm like, shit, he got hurt. And there's 2 Javiers in the group. I also want to say that. There's 2 Javiers. There's our Javier. And then there's a Javier that belongs to another host family. So when Peggy said not our Javier, she meant that, but it was just funny to say, like, ours. Like, he's now part of ours. Okay, so she hangs up and she's bawling. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? She goes, our Javier is a thief. I'm like, no, what happened? And she goes, that was the Macy's. She said that was the Bond, because she used to call the Bon Marché B-O-N-D, the Bond, because she'd get things wrong. And that's a part of all the things that Peggy says. Like, she says so funny things, like Fred Meyers with an S, even though it's not Fred Meyer. So she goes, that was the Bond. They called, and he's been stealing. And I was like, oh, shit. So we're driving there, and Peggy doesn't want to hear any music. I'm trying to turn, so I just put on my, like, Walkman. I didn't have a Discman until I was, like, 18, and by that time, iPods were almost here. So I had a Walkman, which worked way better than a Discman, by the way. No skips, no breaks. Older technology is sometimes great. And I'm just tuning out, because I don't know what's going to happen. I know the whole mood in the house is going to change. I know she's not going to tell Donnie. For the all of time, it's don't tell Donnie. And I feel so bad for my dad. And Dad, if you ever want to know all the things she didn't tell you, just ask me. They're not bad. And that's the whole point. Why didn't you just tell Dad? Like, that's what married people do. If you're married, make sure you don't have a don't tell Donnie rule. Because, no offense, Peggy, but it's not healthy, right? So anyway, but she doesn't want to disappoint my dad or upset him. And, like, I get that, you know. If you watch The Wonder Years, you'll get it too. Very that dynamic in the parental household of mine. So anyway, he can't speak English, so it doesn't even matter. Like, he gets in the car, his head's down, it's not like he's being banned from going out or banned from good food or, like, nothing worse is happening on this trip. She's just so disappointed, and he has to see her cry, and he doesn't know, like, what her emotions are. And I just remember we picked him up. It took a long time. We had to sign papers. Peggy was bawling the whole time. And he was telling his friend who spoke English was like, in our country, it's no joke. They literally would cut off your hand for things like this 10 years ago, even today. And depending on what part of Spain you were in, I'm like, really? And so I just thought it was wild that somebody that came from a foreign country that had such different rules on stealing, maybe that's why they tried it, is because here the laws weren't as bad. But what happens to you when you go home? I don't really know. This little thing is so cute. So, poor fucking Javier, like, his hearing probably went down 2 points by the time he went home. You know, he's probably got hearing aids by now. So he would be... Oh, and... You know, here in America, we have our 21st birthday, and that's when you can drink. And in Britain, how old are you? You're 17 when you can drink, or 16 or something. Okay, well here, it's 21. And there in Spain, and at least in 1997, or whatever year it was, 6, 7, it was 16. And he had his 16th birthday here, and Peggy wouldn't let him drink. But I sure did find him 3 beers, because he found a way, like he was telling me in Spanish, and I like had a Spanish dictionary because he was with us for 2 weeks, so I figured out what he was saying. I wanted to communicate with him because he was my age, you know. I was 15 and I was 14, almost 15, and he had just turned 16. So he was a year older than me. Like, he seemed cool. I wanted to talk to him, but you know. And he smoked a cigarette with me. It was so funny because, like, he found me smoking, and I was just like, shit, is he gonna tell Peggy? And I was just like, do you smoke? And he's like, sweet! So yeah, nobody should smoke, especially cigarettes, like, and I'm just saying, that's just story time. So, then when I realized he was cool, in my opinion, I got that Spanish dictionary, I found out it was his birthday coming up, and then I went to my friend, who I'm going to do lots of story times about, and we're going to call her B, as in the letter B. But B, at her house, her parents always had loads of beer and whatever, so we just took 3 beers and then gave them to Javi for his birthday. So anyway, he did get to have 3 beers donated by B, and that was all really fun and great. And he got to take home the WWF stuff and whatever kind of record he may have had in Spain. I'm not sure. Poor boy, though. Guys, I hope you're enjoying my story times. This is number 2 so far. If you didn't see number 1, it was called the Gina video. Very, very, very funny. So I'm coming back with more. I'm going to come back with another one and tell you all the funny things Peggy says wrong. Like we were talking about the Bon Marché. She called it the Bond. And we'll come back with some more funny things on Peggy. So I'll see you guys soon for another story time. Leave comments if you have funny exchange student stories. I would love, love, love to hear them. Bye, guys.